Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're running a few minutes late. Mr. Lazzarini and the guest is, they're on their way. They'll be here in about 3-4 minutes. Thanks.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us today, and good to see all of you. Some of you first time in person, so good afternoon to you all. Sorry we're a few minutes late. I will first pass on the floor to, okay, maybe before that, just in terms of format, because Alessandra is not around today. When we close, when you ask questions, please introduce yourselves. Let me first pass on the floor to Mr. Anton Leis. He is the Secretary General and Executive Director of the Spanish Agency for International Cooperation and Development, and also the Chair of the UNRWA NADCOM. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yes. Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. I'm here as the chair of the ADCOM in probably what could be the most important advisory commission meeting in several years, given the unprecedented situation that UNRWA is experiencing, that the region is experiencing, that we are seeing. Number one, because there is a complicated situation created by the adoption of legislation in the Knesset that jeopardizes for the first time in history UNRWA's operation in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, where the agency's headquarters are located, and also in Gaza, but also because the situation on the ground, as we heard this morning from UNRWA staff, is as dire as it has been since October 7. Spain has taken over this chairmanship as part of an active engagement for peace in the region. Our intention is to provide support for an irreplaceable and indispensable, and I underline those two words, irreplaceable and indispensable, agency for 6 million Palestine refugees in the Middle East, not just in Gaza, in the entire Middle East. It is indispensable and irreplaceable in the absence of a political solution to the conflict, because all these people depend on UNRWA for basic services such as health, education, or social services. And let me be very clear. UNRWA is like no other UN agency. No other UN agency has the mandate of almost a quasi-government providing those services. The UNRWA's mandate was established and has been continually extended under Article 7 of the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 302, which includes the provision of services, assistance and protection for Palestine refugees in 5 fields of operation. Until there is a just and durable solution to the plight of Palestine refugees in accordance with international law, there is simply no alternative to UNRWA, as it has a key and fundamental role in providing education, providing health, relief and social services to Palestine refugees, and also, very important as well, stabilizing the region or contributing to regional stability. This is particularly the case in Gaza, since the Hamas terrorist attacks of October 7th, we all condemn. UNRWA has been the backbone of the humanitarian response in the Strip, and there is certainly no alternative to UNRWA to deliver aid in Gaza. It is the only organization that possesses the staff, the infrastructure, and the capacity to deliver life-saving assistance to Palestine refugees at the scale needed, especially in Gaza. But more generally, UNRWA is indispensable as well in the West Bank and the wider region as well for these 6 million people. We have a very important agenda ahead of us. We conveyed to the Commissioner General and to UNRWA colleagues, of course, our regrets for the loss of more than 240 staff members in Gaza. We extended our condolences to their families, friends and colleagues. We also noticed that at least 190 UNRWA facilities in Gaza have suffered severe damage to date. Spain has condemned these deaths and the destruction of health and educational facilities. Yet it's also remarkable, and we congratulated the organization, that despite all of this, UNRWA has worked tirelessly to assist the civilian population in Gaza. And just to give one example, 156,000 children have been vaccinated against polio by UNRWA over the last 2 months. The agenda for today and tomorrow is quite complete. We'll have briefings on the situation and UNRWA's activities in Gaza and the overall region, including Lebanon, which is, of course, very concerning also for Palestine refugees. There are 3 key points. First, of course, we'll discuss the situation created by the Knesset legislation. And I think what we intend to do there is to affirm our strong support for the agency in continuing its vital work pursuant to the mandate. There is a strong opposition to the legislation adopted and of course, a grave concern that if implemented, the legislation would have far-reaching consequences, effectively stopping UNRWA's operation in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and de facto preventing UNRWA's vital operations in Gaza, which would risk also setting a dangerous precedent that will undermine the work of the United Nations and the multilateral system. And indeed, this is not just about the West Bank and Gaza. It is not just about the Middle East. It is not just about UNRWA. It is about the UN's Charter and international law more broadly. Second, we'll discuss today how to counter the massive amounts of disinformation and misinformation against UNRWA, and we'll provide the agency with some recommendations, hopefully, on how to respond to that. Stressing in particular this unique mandate and position that UNRWA has as a UN agency, because there is no other organization like UNRWA. And third, we'll continue to discuss the internal governance of UNRWA and the continued efforts undertaken by the Commissioner General and his team to strengthen neutrality, including through the implementation of the recommendations made in the Colonna report. The agency has made progress. We'll continue to address the remaining recommendations in the Colonna report. We'll continue to work closely with the Commissioner General and the organization on this. And on broader governance reforms, we will also provide or try to provide guidance and advice on how to strengthen UNRWA's financial position and improve the governance structure of the agency, or how to enhance partnerships with other organizations. That is our role as chair of UNRWA. Let me be also very clear. In Spain, or speaking as Spain, we are deeply committed to peace in the Middle East. We have been strong proponents of the two-state solution. We see, of course, the continuity of UNRWA's activities as crucial in that effort, and we stand ready to provide UNRWA all the support needed, financial, of course, and this year we have provided 23.5 million euros, which is a historical high for the organization, but also politically, and that is also why we have taken on this role of chairmanship of the ADCOM.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? Thank you so much, Mr. Leys, and thank you for the generosity and the support of Spain to UNRWA and Palestine refugees. Mr. Philippe Lazzarini, Commissioner General of UNRWA, over to you, please.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be with you. And thank you, Minister Leys. It was correct?
Yeah, okay.
It was correct.
It was here green for me. So.
No, it was good here.
Sorry about that.
But again, thank you, Minister Leys, and thank you to Spain, first for the chairmanship of the ADCOM, but also for stewarding the support with other member states to the agency, both politically but also financially. Spain has been very involved also in New York with other member states when it comes to the joint commitment to the agency. You said a lot, so I will just be a little bit briefer and give more time for the Q&A today. As you know, I was at the GA last week at the Fourth Committee because of the unprecedented time the agency is going through, which I have described as being certainly the darkest moment for the agency, but also for the Palestinian refugees across the region. You have all followed recently the adoption of the two Knesset bill on the 28th of October. I have drawn the attention of the member state that now the clock is ticking. Basically, it's a 3-month deadline. I have shared with member states our 3 asks. The first one being we have to stop or prevent the implementation of this bill. Secondly, once this implementation of this bill is put on hold, we need to delineate the role of the agency within a political pathway leading to the two-state solution, leading to an empowered Palestinian authorities. As Minister Leys said, you keep hearing that the agency is irreplaceable. I keep being asked, why is the agency irreplaceable? In fact, it is replaceable by a functioning state, by functioning institution, And for this, we need to invest even more into a political process in order to make sure that this reality will be the reality of tomorrow for the Palestinian. But we are irreplaceable for any other United Nations organization, because there is no United Nations organization which has been geared to provide public-like services like UNRWA. There is absolutely no UN agency which would provide primary or secondary education to hundreds of thousands of girls or boys anywhere in the world, but also across the region. So my message to the Member States has also been, please make sure that we are not throwing the baby with the water at the same time, because if we do this and we do not have a viable alternative in place, we will create a vacuum. We will also deprive hundreds of thousands of children to the right of education. But by doing this, we will also sow the seeds for more extremism, more hate in the future. So what is at stake? It's not, and you heard from me many times, because I might also ask about what are the political objectives, what are the objectives behind the dismantlement of the agency. And you heard me talking about the aim of stripping the Palestinians from the refugee status, through this also undermining the aspiration of the Palestinians for self-determination, but also undermining the effort of the international community to a two-state solution. On this one, we have to be clear, even if UNRWA today would cease its operation, the status of refugee would remain. Why so? Because the status of Palestinian refugees is determined in a General Assembly Resolution 194, whereas the activities and the mandate of the agency is defined in a different GA resolution, which was basically adopted later. I keep being asked either yes or not a plan B. There is no plan B within the UN agency, within the UN family, because there is no other agency geared to provide the same activities. And in reality, UNRWA is the response of the international community to the plight of the Palestinian refugees through the mandate provided by the GA resolution. So if there is no UN or international community response, the responsibility will go back to the occupying power, being Israel. And that's where we have to ask, where does the plan B sit today? I would like just to conclude by saying that we can already feel the impact of these laws. Our staff in the region is deeply, deeply concerned, anxious, worried about what might happen, and rightly so. We had already last week an incident where a female staff member was searched at her home by IDF soldier, and when they realized that she's working for UNRWA, basically they told her, how come you work for a terrorist organization? They asked for access to all the data in the computer, in total violation of our immunity and privileges. And then she was brought for interrogation for a few hours, handcuffed to a post. This, of course, creates a lot of anxiety. It's not just an anxiety regarding, the job security or the livelihood. Talking about this, only in the occupied Palestinian territory, we have 17,000 staff, and we are the second main employer of a Palestinian after the Palestinian Authority. I think I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lazzarini. We will open the floor for questions, also for Mr. Anton Lees. Rolando here, who is a great friend and a colleague, is also going to help us with any questions for those who are online with us. With that, we open the floor. Please, because I don't know most of you, and I'm not Alessandra, please introduce yourselves and say which news agency or news outlet you work with. We start with the gentleman over there, please.
Merci. Jérémy Lange pour Radio France et Radio France Internationale. Yeah.
Sorry, please
French
go
is,
ahead.
French is okay, I think. Monsieur
Yes,
Lazzarini,
it is.
bonjour. C'est bon pour les deux. Vous l'avez dit, il y a beaucoup de vents contraires en ce moment. Il y a les lois passées par la Knesset. Il y a d'autres vents contraires. Peut-être l'arrivée de Donald Trump de nouveau aux États-Unis, qui met peut-être un terme à toute velléité de retrouver un financement américain, en tout cas pour les 4 prochaines années. Les États européens qui peuvent compenser rentrent dans une période d'austérité budgétaire. Donc là aussi, la question du financement se pose peut-être. Finalement, vous l'avez dit, vous donnez une deadline de 3 mois à peu près. J'aimerais savoir, aujourd'hui, vous l'avez beaucoup dit dans cette salle, que l'UNRWA n'a jamais eu vraiment plus de perspectives au-delà de 3 à 4 mois. Vous étiez habitué à ça. Aujourd'hui, on sent que c'est un peu plus grave. Concrètement, combien de temps l'UNRWA va pouvoir encore fonctionner? Est-ce qu'on est proche d'un arrêt de mort de l'organisation?
I think both work. You can do like half-half if you wish.
Je suis souvent venu ici pour parler de la situation financière désespérée de l'agence, mais je pense qu'aujourd'hui, effectivement, on en est beaucoup plus loin. Ce n'est pas que la crise financière qui est une crise existentielle. Il y a une crise politique, il y a une volonté politique de démanteler l'agence par un État membre des Nations Unies, l'État d'Israël. Donc, dans les mois à venir, qu'est-ce qui va se passer? La première chose, c'est que premièrement, nous avons vu au cours des dernières semaines, depuis l'adoption des 2 lois par la Knesset, une extraordinaire solidarité de la communauté internationale. Que vous alliez à l'Assemblée générale, au Conseil de sécurité, ou en fait dans tous les organismes régionaux, les prises de position ont été prises en très fort soutien à l'agence et en condamnant en fait l'adoption de ces législations. La question que tout le monde pose, c'est que va-t-il se passer si l'UNRWA est obligé et contraint à cesser ses activités? Est-ce qu'on va sacrifier les 600 000 700 000 garçons et filles qui aujourd'hui vivent dans les ruines de Gaza? Parce qu'on n'aurait pas une alternative dans les mois qui viennent pour reprendre l'éducation. Qu'est-ce qu'on va faire avec les 16 000 personnes qui quotidiennement vont dans les centres de santé d'UNRWA? En réalité, si on fait le calcul, il y a plus de 6 millions de consultations qui ont été données depuis le début de la guerre. Malgré toutes les difficultés que l'on rencontre, nos collègues sur place ont réussi à maintenir des activités absolument critiques. Les vents aujourd'hui sont contraires, c'est vrai, c'est un environnement extraordinairement adverse, voire hostile. On n'a pas parlé de toutes les attaques dont l'agence est subie aujourd'hui, mais on l'a fait précédemment ici dans cette salle. Ce n'est pas seulement des attaques opérationnelles sur le personnel, sur les bâtiments et sur les opérations, mais ce sont aussi toutes les attaques politiques, les campagnes de désinformation, les campagnes diplomatiques auprès des pays donateurs. Et aujourd'hui, on a vu effectivement aussi cette campagne législative avec l'adoption de ces 2 lois. Qu'est-ce que ça va signifier? Ma demande principale aux États membres, c'est user de toute votre influence pour que ces lois ne soient pas mises en œuvre. Donc le premier test, effectivement, c'est entre maintenant et la fin du mois de janvier. Que va-t-il se passer d'ici là? Maintenant, les auteurs de ces lois ont très clairement annoncé leurs intentions. Leurs intentions est de dire nous voulons mettre un terme à l'UNRWA, car nous voulons mettre un terme au statut de réfugié et nous voulons mettre un terme à ce qu'ils disent est la perpétuation de la dépendance des réfugiés palestiniens. Nous avons une occasion, qui est une occasion que nous n'avons pas eue au cours de cette dernière génération, saisissons-la. Et vous vous souvenez aussi peut-être qu'au début de la guerre, démanteler UNRWA et détruire UNRWA était devenu un objectif de la guerre. En fait, nous sommes ce qu'on appelle un casualty of this war. Est-ce que demain, UNRWA va continuer d'opérer? C'est une question à laquelle je ne peux pas répondre, mais on se doit de donner tous les moyens possibles et imaginables pour essayer non seulement de retarder, mais d'empêcher la mise en œuvre de cette loi en l'absence d'une solution alternative viable qui, aujourd'hui, est la création d'un État palestinien.
All right. Thanks very much. The gentleman on the third row
Yeah.
to the right, please.
Monsieur Lazzarini, mesdames et messieurs, merci pour le temps que vous concédez. Vous connaissez
Can you
très
please
bien,
introduce
c'est Ricardo
yourself, sir?
Bagnato,
Sorry to
Télévision
interrupt.
Suisse.
Can you please introduce yourself? Which media outlet are you with? Sorry, I didn't.
C'est Ricardo Bagnato, Télévision Suisse.
Thank you very much.
Vous connaissez très bien le dossier suisse. Le Conseil des États va voter prochainement. Le Conseil national, donc les chambres fédérales, ont à moitié décidé de suspendre le financement pour l'agence que vous conduisez. La semaine dernière, la RTS, nos collègues, confrères, consoeurs de la RTS, ont pu lire un document sur lequel même le DFAE, donc le département des Affaires étrangères, s'est penché sur la question: est-ce que nous serons retenus complices du génocide au cas où on va arrêter le financement à l'UNRWA? La réponse du département a été assez claire: non, il n'y a pas ces éléments-là. Alors la question, d'autre part, c'est qu'une partie du Conseil des États dit: mais nous, on n'arrête pas de aider Gaza, on arrête seulement le financement à l'UNRWA. Donc les deux questions. Première question, est-ce que vous pensez qu'un manque de financement, est-ce que vous avez un commentaire à faire sur le manque de financement que la Suisse pourrait décider prochainement? Est-ce que ça serait, à votre avis, un élément de complicité dans le génocide? Mais surtout, est-ce que vous croyez que sans l'UNRWA, est-il possible d'aider la population de Gaza et donc autres organisations? Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres organisations à part l'UNRWA qui pourraient aider la population de Gaza?
Écoutez, deux, trois commentaires. Premièrement, si vous parlez d'amener un camion avec de la nourriture, vous trouverez certainement une alternative. Bien qu'aujourd'hui, la présence de l'UNRWA est telle, et je rappelle juste un chiffre, nous avons 13 000 employés, la deuxième plus grande agence des Nations Unies présente à Gaza est le Programme alimentaire mondial avec 200 employés. Alors évidemment qu'il y a un espace pour augmenter l'empreinte et la présence logistique du Programme alimentaire mondial ou d'autres organisations à Gaza, et que effectivement, si dans votre question, la question est: est-ce qu'on peut augmenter l'assistance en nourriture? Ma réponse est oui. Est-ce qu'il y a aujourd'hui une autre organisation en dehors d'un État qui fonctionne pour ramener des enfants dans un environnement éducatif? La réponse est non. Il n'y a personne. La même réponse vous sera donnée pour la santé primaire. Donc, par rapport à votre deuxième question, j'aurais tendance à dire l'histoire nous jugera plus tard. C'est-à-dire, nous avons une tragédie sans précédent qui se déroule sous nos yeux, et puis il y a des décisions qui sont prises qui ont des conséquences et qui ont un impact sur ces populations. Et je pense qu'aujourd'hui, il est peut-être trop tôt de répondre à cette question, mais dans quelques années, nos prédécesseurs, ceux qui vont nous suivre, diront: ah, qu'est-ce que vous avez fait ou ne pas fait? Et là, sur cette question qui vient de l'administration fédérale, je ne pourrais pas répondre. Mais ultimement, je vous l'ai dit plus d'une fois, j'espère que la Suisse reste un partenaire de l'agence, reste un partenaire du multilatéralisme, reste un partenaire en fait des décisions qui ont été prises par l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies et que, dans ces conditions, elle continue d'être un partenaire de l'UNRWA qui est le véhicule que la communauté internationale a décidé, qui est là pour aider les réfugiés palestiniens jusqu'au jour où il y aura une solution politique juste et durable.
Thank you very much. Mr. Leys, did you want to add anything on that one? Thanks.
Juste ajouter ce que le commissaire général a dit. Pour l'Espagne, le choix est clair. Et dès le début, quand il y a eu des questionnements par rapport au financement d'UNRWA, nous avons annoncé, notre ministre des Affaires étrangères au mois de mars a annoncé un premier paquet financier d'urgence pour faire face à la situation qui était très compliquée à ce moment-là au niveau financier. Mais on est prêt à appuyer UNRWA du côté financier et du côté aussi politique. Et il faut voir notre présidence de l'ADCOM dans ces cadres-là. En Espagne, il y a un soutien fort pour ce qu'on fait avec UNRWA. Il y a une participation très forte de la société civile dans ces moments. Et ce qui me semble très important, c'est de combattre la désinformation qui est autour de UNRWA. Croyez-moi, je suis directeur d'une agence de coopération. Je travaille avec des différentes agences humanitaires et de développement des Nations Unies. Et UNRWA, il est irremplaçable. Le commissaire général a donné des chiffres, mais au-delà des chiffres, UNRWA rassemble beaucoup plus un gouvernement qu'une agence des Nations Unies. Et ça, c'est un fait, je pense, incontournable.
Thank you, Mr. Leys. We will go next to AFP, please.
Thank you very much for the question. Nina Larson, AFP. I was wondering if you could say something about whether you've heard any concrete things from various countries about how they might be able to step up and help block this move by Israel that you're calling for, if you've seen any signs. And especially the U.S. was critical of it, but that might shift with the change of administration coming in January. I don't know how you would counter that. And finally, I was just wondering if you could say something about what impact, you mentioned it briefly, but the impact on UNRWA's employees on the ground in Jerusalem or otherwise, how, if this ban does take effect, how will that impact them in practice? Thanks.
On the impact on our staff and whether you've heard from
yes,
the
okay.
states on that.
Yeah, thank you. Listen, I just come back from New York, where there are quite a lot of activities going on. Last week there was an informal General Assembly meeting dedicated on UNRWA, which was triggered by the letter I sent to the President. Then this week we had the Force Committee. Number of discussions also are taking place about whether to submit a question to the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, first about the legality of the decision regarding the laws. Since a few months ago, the ICJ has ruled the occupation being illegal. Can you, in a context where the occupation has been ruled illegal, take a decision to ban the agency? There are also other discussions which are alluded for the time being about triggering some dispute mechanism through the General Assembly and also the ICJ. So all these discussions now are taking place among member states, and there will also be an emergency session in December. Now, yes, of course, we have a new incoming administration in the U.S. No one really knows in which direction things will go. We keep hearing that promoting a lasting peace is a priority, and I do not see how you can promote a lasting peace without addressing the question of the Palestinian in the region. So, of course, people are extremely worried that it might go in the direction of annexation, but annexation wouldn't mean a lasting peace in the region, having addressed the question of the Palestinian. It can take a different direction, which goes much more through a number of normalization process in the region, for which expectations are that the issue of Palestine be also addressed. So I would say, let's see in the coming weeks in which direction it goes, but this is also one of the reasons why we have approached a number of member states to shield the agency in any proposed political pathway which would lead to either the creation of the State of Palestine, but which would address the Palestinian question. Last but not least, yes, you have the first impact on our staff regarding the job insecurity, but beyond that, a real fear that any of them could be harassed, could be arrested, investigated, convicted for belonging or having worked with an organization which in this context is considered as being a terrorist organization.
Many thanks. We go next to Efe, please. Yes.
Yes, good afternoon. Isabel Sacco for Efe. My question is maybe for Mr. Leys. I would like to know, given the fact that there are many doubts on what is the position the next U.S. administration will take towards UNRWA, the other partners, more important partners for Israel, could be the European countries, which can put some pressure on Israel to avoid implementation of these bills we are discussing. So the question is, what is, from your perspective now as president of this advisory committee, what is how united are the Europeans now to take a common position on this, because we know that there are some different positions too among them. What is the leverage they have? And what also countries from the Middle East, how much are they ready to be involved and to really take a strong position on this, on the way they can, and from other maybe developing countries, even China? Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. Look, we are chairing the ADCOM. There are 29 members and 3 observers in the room. I cannot speak on behalf of all of them, but I did sense in the room today a strong sense of consensus on expressing a rejection of these legal moves. And we are trying to support the Commissioner General and the organization on any means to protect the agency and the continued operation. So I did not sense any type of dissent or different of opinions on this. If we look at funding as well, all donors except for one have resumed funding for the organization. So I do sense that among the donor countries and the host countries that are represented in the ADCOM, there is a strong support for the continuation of UNRWA's activities, a strong rejection of the measures adopted, and strong support for the work of the Commissioner General and UNRWA at this crucial point in time.
Thanks, Anton. Next is we go to Al Mayadeen, followed by Reuters and Kuna, and then we will go online for a few questions and see how we go after that. Al Mayadeen, please.
Merci beaucoup, Moussa. C'est Al Mayadeen TV. Monsieur Lazzarini, concrètement, les restrictions israéliennes au début de ces décisions, ça va être comment? Donc les aides humanitaires qui devaient être donc acheminées vers Gaza, la Cisjordanie. Aussi, on sait que l'argent de l'UNRWA passe par des banques liées à Israël. Donc concrètement, ça va se passer comment? Et aussi une petite question sur l'avenir de l'UNRWA dans les pays de la région, le Liban, la Syrie. Est-ce que ça va être affecté, votre travail? Merci.
Voilà, merci. Brièvement, concrètement, je ne sais pas encore, parce que nous n'avons pas reçu de communication officielle sur comment l'État d'Israël souhaite mettre en œuvre ces nouvelles lois. Pour l'instant, c'est de la spéculation sur les intentions, mais ce que l'on entend, c'est que l'intention, c'est un arrêt des activités à Gaza, un arrêt des activités à Jérusalem-Est et aussi un arrêt des activités en Cisjordanie. Aujourd'hui, nous avons déjà quelques ministères ou départements qui ont pris des initiatives telles que le ministère des Finances qui a refusé les exemptions de taxes qui nous sont normalement conférées à travers les privilèges et immunités. Mais à partir du 28 janvier, si ces lois sont mises en œuvre, ça signifiera que nous ne pourrons plus opérer. À Gaza aujourd'hui, si la politique de pas de contact avec l'autorité israélienne est mise en place dès le premier jour, nous ne pourrons plus coordonner nos mouvements, nous ne pourrons plus faire de la déconfliction et donc l'environnement deviendra beaucoup trop dangereux pour notre personnel sur place. Les pays avoisinants, il n'y a pas d'impact pour l'instant.
Okay, thank you. Next is Reuters, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Emma Farge from Reuters. Two questions, please. One was on a looting incident at the weekend, which seems to have been one of the worst, maybe the worst, since the war began. Can you tell us what this shows? And also, do you suspect that you were in any way lured into a trap by the Israelis? I know there was a last-minute change of route, which I wanted to get your opinion on. Secondly, is the fact, maybe for Mr. Lace as well, the fact that this meeting is taking place in Geneva of any significance? Does it have anything to do with your crisis? I know it's often elsewhere, or is that just a coincidence? Thank you.
Okay, we start with Mr. Lazzarini about the convoy, and then we go to you, Lace, Mr. Lace.
It seems you have more details than I have, but regarding the last-minute change of road, but I confirm indeed that there have been looting. More than 100 trucks have been looted, primarily UNRWA and WFP, basically 80–90% of the convoy on that day. What does it show? Well, we have been warning a long time ago about the total breakdown of civil order. Until 4 or 5 months ago, we still had local capacity people who were escorting the convoy. This has completely gone, which means we are in an environment where local gangs, local families are struggling among each other to take control of any business or any activities taking place in the south. It has become an impossible environment to operate. Related to this incident, we had also hundreds of people who tried to storm into the Ranyonis vocational center because they thought that the food arrived there, and people were so desperate to have the food that they stormed into the vocational training center. But the convoys were looted, so there was absolutely nothing to take from the warehouses in Ranyonis.
Thanks, Mr. Lazzarini. Just to clarify, Emma, for you and everyone, the Khan Yunis Vocational Training Center is something that is run by UNRWA. And we'll come back to you on whether the route has changed of the convoy a little bit later. Mr. Lace, over to you.
Yes, on the question of Geneva, why Geneva, as normal rules of UNRWA apply, these meetings take place in the Middle East, in the region, in Jordan, but we leave no normal times. And of course, there is a significance in having this meeting in the birthplace of international law and international humanitarian law, which is Geneva. We wanted to have good attendance from capitals, and that's what, in consultation with the organization and the member states, we decided to convene here in Geneva.
Thanks, Mr. Leys. Last here for now is Kuna, the Kuwait News Agency. Yes, please.
Iman
Go ahead.
from Kuna Agency. Alors, juste une question, parce que la majorité des questions ont été faites déjà. Est-ce qu'il y a vraiment une crainte, on va dire, à l'intérieur au sein du UN, que cette décision de la Knesset israélienne soit élargie, on va dire, ou bien généralisée sur les autres agences du UN? Je sais que l'UNRWA, c'est spécial parce que elle fait un travail que les autres agences ne fait pas, mais considérée comme une organisation terroriste, est-ce que ça peut être, il y a une vraie crainte que ça peut être généralisé sur les autres agences de l'UN et sur aussi les autres ONG comme la Croissant-Rouge, par exemple? Merci.
Oui, il y a une vraie crainte. Jusqu'à présent, il y a d'autres agences des Nations Unies qui ont vu partie de leur personnel refusé dans les territoires occupés, à commencer par le Bureau des droits de l'homme, qui en fait n'a plus de présence sur place. On a vu cette année nombre d'ONG internationales qui ont vu leur personnel international refuser un visa et donc ils n'ont plus de présence internationale. On a aussi vu qu'en général, les personnes qui sont actives dans le domaine de ce que l'on dit la communication, l'advocacy, la protection, sont généralement des personnes qui sont le plus souvent refusées pour un renouvellement de visa. Mais nous avons aussi des craintes sur le précédent, parce que si on accepte qu'une agence des Nations Unies mandatée par l'Assemblée générale puisse être, comment dire, expulsée de cette manière-là, vous avez à travers le monde une quarantaine, cinquantaine de conflits, et si on accepte ce précédent dans le cadre du conflit israélo-palestinien, il n'y a aucune raison que l'on empêche cela d'arriver dans un autre contexte, ce qui veut aussi dire à ce moment-là un affaiblissement du droit humanitaire international, un affaiblissement de nos instruments communs du monde multilatéral.
Great, thanks. We go online. We have a couple of questions. We start with DPA, the German news agency. Please go ahead.
Oui, merci beaucoup. C'est Christiane Ulrich de l'agence de presse allemande. Et si vous me permettez, je vais poser mes questions en anglais. Merci.
Yes,
one
please
is
go ahead.
to Mr. Leys. Thank you. One is to Mr. Leys. You say there's a lot of support in the room and everyone agrees UNRWA is irreplaceable, but what concretely can the members of the advisory committee do between now and January to make sure that these laws are not implemented? And I have one question to Mr. Lazzarini. Can you talk about what kinds of contacts you personally have with the Israeli authorities? And could UNRWA operate without a presence in Israel? Could they access the Gaza Strip, I don't know, from Egypt? Or is there any way that you can envisage UNRWA operating without a presence in Israel? Thank you.
Okay, we start with you, Mr. Leys, please.
Well, on what it is that member states can do, already convening this meeting and agreeing on these important points and giving guidance to the organization is significant. Mr. Lazzarini already mentioned a few additional actions that are being taken in New York, and of course it's incumbent on each of us in our capacity to convey to the Israeli authorities the importance of suspending the application of these laws so that we do not face the catastrophic situation I was mentioning before. But indeed, all diplomatic means are at play, and we are trying to do everything we can in all fora. In the UN General Assembly, there was a meeting that the Commissioner General attended. Of course, here in the ADCOM, that is an advisory body, but an important body to convey messages to the organization. In this case, it's a clear message of support and commitment to do everything we can to stop the implementation of these laws.
Over to you.
Yes. Short answer, most of the activities we won't be able to pursue, especially in Gaza, because any movement needs to be deconflicted. Even if we would come in from Egypt, we would need to coordinate with the Israeli authority, and the law is very clear. No contact policy means no contact. They do not even want another agency to contact Israel on our behalf. On your question, what are my contact with Israel? The agency has contact, but as you know, a few months ago, the Minister of Foreign Affairs has prohibited the member of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to have direct contact with the Commissioner General. But we have the contact at the level of our various directors on the ground and also with my deputies. Yeah.
Thank you. We stay online. The Associated Press, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is Jamie from Associated Press. I had a question for both Mr. Lazzarini and for Mr. Lais. Mr. Lais, you just answered the question from my colleague at DPA, Christiana. Could you please just tell us what you expect at the end of this meeting, specifically, concretely, what do you expect? And then for Mr. Lazzarini, you have both been speaking about diplomatic pressure that you hope will be mobilized with regard to Israel to try to convince its authorities to back away from this for their plans. How are you going to do that exactly? In other words, the United States, which is a good friend of Israel, has been putting various forms of diplomatic pressure on Israel over the last many months. And to be honest, it hasn't always, even their best friend has not been able to get Israel to do what it wants. So how are you going to convince Israel to do this? And particularly, if I could just add as the last question in there, what reforms, I mean, there's been a lot of calls for reform of UNRWA since this decision by the Knesset was announced. What reforms have you proposed, planned to convince the Israelis that progress is being made at UNRWA that maybe could have them back away? Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Jamie. We will start with Mr. Lais. The first question on the outcomes of the meeting. Over to you.
Well, I think what we are expecting here is, of course, a clear message of support by everyone that participates in UNRWA's Advisory Commission. That is host countries and donor countries. It's a very diverse group. There are countries from the so-called Global South, Global North, countries that host Palestine refugees, countries that contribute financially to the organization. So what we expect is this diverse group to send a unified message of support to the organization at this crucial moment in history, where the continuation of its activities is being put into question, and a clear message also on the concern, the grave concern that these members share about the Knesset laws if they're actually implemented. So, as the Commissioner General mentioned, and I said in the previous response, we are using every platform, every forum available to convey those messages, and it is only natural that the Advisory Commission of UNRWA, that is a body contemplated in UNRWA's governance as the one where donor countries and host countries are represented, that we send this message of unified support for the continuation of the activities of the organization and the grave concern about the several attacks the organization is suffering. And of course, we've been focusing on the legal attack, but there is also there are discussions also about what is happening on the ground, the difficulties to operate. Some of the questions were alluding to that, and the campaigns of disinformation and misinformation that go around the organization. So it is important also to set the record straight and explain what UNRWA does and what UNRWA does differently from other UN agencies, and why, and this is a reality on the ground, why UNRWA is indispensable and irreplaceable. And I think on that, let's face it, in the public opinion, it is important to convey this message, because I am not sure when you listen to some voices that this is clearly understood on some corners. UNRWA is like no other organization active now in Gaza or in the broader region. It is an organization that is more similar to a government, provides services till the very last mile, and that is not the case for all other humanitarian and development partners, whose work we value deeply, and in the case of my agency, in the case of Spain, we work very closely with, but they cannot replace the activities UNRWA is carrying out at the moment. It's simply not realistic.
Thank you, Mr. Leis. Mr. Lazzarini, over to you. Perhaps the two questions can be merged also because we have also other people in the room. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. The two questions are quite different, but on the first one, we are given a voice. It would be easy today to give up, and I do believe that we still owe to the Palestinian refugees and their plight to exhaust all possible avenues. So we will be operating until the day we cannot operate anymore, and meanwhile we will exhaust all possible diplomatic avenues. One of them I described at the beginning is, if today there is a political pathway, just make sure that the role of the agency is stressed, clearly delineated, so that we can accompany the process and hand over after that to an empowered Palestinian authorities. Now, if the pathway goes in the opposite direction, obviously we would certainly not be able to counter that. What reform? The reform member states are referring to in all statements at the GA are the reform related to the implementation of the Catherine Colonna report, encouraging the agency to encouraging the agency to implement all its recommendations, and for this we need also the support of member states. Some of them have contributed resources to help the agency. But that's a reform in the mind of the member states.
Right, thank you very much. We're back in the room with Al Jazeera and then with France 24 and The Lancet.
Merci. Monsieur Philippe Lazzarini, Noureddine Bouziane de la chaîne Al Jazeera, je parle à l'homme. Est-ce que vous ne vous sentez pas seul avec votre organisation face à cette campagne de dénigrement qui est contenue, cette campagne politique, sachant que plusieurs pays, ils ont dénoncé les dernières décisions. Mais je parle à l'homme qui sait, qui a vu, qui a entendu à travers les personnes qui travaillent au sein de cette très respectueuse organisation, qui ont vu ce que vivent les Palestiniens, ce que vivent les Libanais. Est-ce que vous ne vous sentez pas tout seul parce qu'on ne voit pas une position internationale, mais claire, nette et précise pour dire à Israël, au gouvernement de Netanyahou, on ne peut pas toucher à une organisation qui appartient à l'ONU. Merci.
Merci. J'avais une hésitation parce que je ne savais pas comment répondre à cette question. La réponse courte, c'est oui, bien sûr. Pourquoi? Parce qu'aujourd'hui, la solidarité que l'on voit, qui s'exprime de la part de la communauté internationale, est très très forte en matière de déclaration, de condamnation, mais il n'y a pas de passage de passage à une situation où certaines violations importantes, comme affaiblir en fait la Charte des Nations Unies et affaiblir le droit international, n'ont aucune conséquence. Souvenez-vous que le secrétaire général, à l'ouverture de l'Assemblée générale, a fait part aux États membres d'une crise d'impunité totale. Et en raison de cette crise d'impunité totale, on remet en question tous les instruments hérités depuis la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, qui fait partie de cet ordre mondial. Aujourd'hui, effectivement, personnellement, de là où je me trouve, je me rends compte que les États membres en sont conscients, il n'y a aucun doute, mais chacun hésite à aller un pas plus loin. Et pourtant, il y a des instruments. Il y a de nombreux instruments. Évidemment qu'il y a la Cour pénale de justice internationale, mais dans de nombreux pays, vous avez des instruments nationaux. Des instruments nationaux qui disent que si on a un partenariat commercial, si on a un partenariat militaire, on s'attend à ce que des droits de l'homme, des droits humains soient respectés. Mais ces instruments ne sont pas utilisés. Et ultimement, effectivement, quand il s'agit de la cause palestinienne, au-delà des mots, on se sent seul.
Okay, thanks very much. Last question in the room is for Frans van Kaart, The Lancet. Please go ahead. Sorry. We can come back to you in a minute.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. Mr. Lazzarini, at the G20 summit, President Lula has made the epicenter of his summit to combat hunger globally. As we are speaking, you might recall a few days ago, the IPC 5 was revised upwards for famine in Gaza. What is your message to the G20 leaders on this issue as they convene in closed-door sessions to discuss the multilateral issues? Thank you.
You ask what is my public message to the G20. Well, you know, if that's a priority, and I hope it is, Gaza being a man-made hunger situation with a looming famine, it's certainly one of the easiest place to make a difference. Because in Gaza, you need only political will to reverse this spread of hunger and this looming famine. Whereas in other contexts, the response might be much more complicated because of climate change factors. But the straightforward is definitely Gaza.
Thanks. Jamie, you've asked for the floor back. Jamie from AP, please go ahead, and then we come back to the room. The last question is for Anna Giulio.
Thank you very much, Juliette, for letting me have the floor back. Mr. Lazzarini, I just wanted to understand what you said earlier because it sounded kind of interesting. You said that that you're talking about a political pathway that could be clearly delineated so that you can accompany a process to a handover. Are you essentially saying that UNRWA is preparing as a contingency plan to hand over its operations to the Palestinian Authority if it comes to that? I just want to make sure, what is your contingency plan? Is that it?
There was a shortcut in your interpretation right now. I was talking about. I'm planning to hand over to the future state of Palestine, and we are talking today of a political pathway leading to a two-state solution, with after that empowered Palestinian authorities, and that could be part of the lasting and durable solution, and that would be also the viable alternative for UNRWA. Today, we are all mobilized and struggling to make sure that the agency continue to provide access to critical services beyond the end of January. And for this, we need to stop the implementation of this law, but after that, to make sure that we do not have a Damocles sword on our head, that we agree that if genuinely there is a commitment for a lasting political solution, an agency like ours has a play to role by ensuring access to education to the children who will be the future of a Palestinian state, and also to help to capacitate future education services in this environment. And here I believe that UNRWA has indeed a unique role to play.
Great, thanks. Last question here is for Anna Giulio, and then we have to go.
Thank you, Ms. Anadolu. I want to return to the Knesset issue. You already mentioned that UNRWA is feeling the impact of the Knesset law and there needs to be a political pressure. I want to ask, while in this progress, what specific actions can, international organization and other international community can take to safeguard Palestinians access to aid and services? And did the UN communicate with the US recently on the Israelis' ban decision? And also I want to ask, secondly, while winter fast approaching, what is UNRWA's plan to address the needs for winter supplies and housing of the displaced families in Gaza, especially in the north? Thank you.
Just shortly, the US is part of the advisory commission, so they are part of our discussion, and obviously the impact of the Knesset law are at the center, in fact, of our discussion. We are in contact with a number of NGOs about future contingency, but the real contingency plan discussion is taking place in Jerusalem with what we call in our jargon the Humanitarian Country Team, bringing together all the UN agencies and NGO partners. The contingency plan is mainly focusing on urgent humanitarian response. They are not talking about who can step in to take over education or primary health, because there is a realization within this broader community that no one else can step in the absence of a functioning state. In Gaza, as you know, we have difficulties to access. You heard about the looting yesterday. Number of trucks has drastically decreased, especially in October, but still in November, so since more than 6 weeks now. Winter is here, but it's difficult, excruciatingly difficult, to bring non-food items or equipment for the winter.
Thanks. Mr. Leys, last word.
Well, just to say that, of course, winter is a concern, so is education as well. And as part of this meeting, we are going to have a side event on education. It's already almost 2 academic years that children in Gaza have gone without education. And as the Commissioner General was saying, this is very concerning also for the future, for the human capital of Gaza and for Palestine more generally, but also sowing the seed of future conflict as well. We need to work with these children. And let me also add one thing on the question of hunger. The biggest determinant of hunger in the world, not just in the West Bank and Gaza, is conflict, is not climate change. So the best way of ensuring, and as our Brazilian friends are chairing the G20, and G20 meeting is happening today, that we are able to provide food for everyone and we can fight hunger, is to end conflicts. And actually that is also an additional reason why Spain has been so actively involved in UNRWA and more generally on the conflict. And countries are doing what they can. I think in the case of Spain, we've gone beyond words. We have recognized the state of Palestine alongside other member states with the purpose of prompting a political solution on the problem, and having 2 parties that can discuss the only solution that is on the table, of course, which is the 2-state solution.
Great. With that, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
too. See you around.